In the year 2647, the stars were no longer silent. Humanity had crossed the black seas of space, building cities on distant worlds and stations that floated like silver lanterns above cold planets. But even after all their progress, war still found them. The War of Ascension had ended 5 years ago. The enemy had been the Zarn Collective, a race of emotionless machines that saw feelings as weakness and flesh as failure. The Zarn wanted perfection through logic. Humanity fought to prove that imperfection could still win. Dr. Alira Voss had been there during the last days of that war. She was a young surgeon then, serving on the battlefront medical ship Solace. When the ship was struck by a plasma missile, she had saved 20 lives before the fire reached her. Her chest had been torn apart by shrapnel. The doctors replaced her failing heart with a biosynthetic core, cold and perfect. It saved her life, but took away her ability to feel. Since then, they called her the Iron Angel. Now, Alira worked aboard Helios 9, a large medical station orbiting a dead planet. She repaired soldiers, refugees, and sometimes even old droids that were too broken to be scrapped. Her white uniform was always spotless, her tone calm, her eyes steady. Nothing ever seemed to touch her heart anymore, because she believed she no longer had one. To her, love was a kind of pain, and pain was something she had buried long ago. One quiet morning, a transport ship docked with Helios 9. Its captain rushed into the medical bay shouting for help. "Emergency case. Terran defense pilot critically wounded." Alira looked up from her workstation. "Bring him in." They wheeled in a stretcher carrying a man covered in burns and blood. His flight suit was torn, his left arm missing below the elbow and his chest armor cracked open. His vitals flickered weakly on the display. "What's his name?" Alira asked. "Commander Ryan Thorne," the medic replied. "He was shot down protecting a convoy near Vega Prime. We barely pulled him out of his fighter." Alira's calm voice didn't change. "Prep Surgical Bay 3. I'll handle him myself." Hours later, under bright white lights, Alira worked with robotic precision. Her hands moved like machines, cutting, repairing, sealing. She replaced damaged organs with synth tissue and reconnected nerve clusters with surgical nanobots. But as she worked on his neural grid, something strange happened. The system's diagnostic screen showed heavy resistance. "The tissue is rejecting the implants," her assistant AI reported. "That's not possible," Alira replied. "The pattern matches perfectly." Yet even as she adjusted the code, his neurons refused to accept the synthetic connections. His body was fighting to stay human. Then something impossible happened. Ryan's eyelids fluttered open mid-surgery. His gaze met hers, weak but steady. "You don't have to fix me," he whispered through cracked lips. "Just hold on." His voice was soft, almost peaceful, even as his vitals dropped. Alira froze for a second. Those words, and "hold on," echoed inside her like a forgotten melody. No one had spoken to her like that in years. She almost forgot to breathe. Then she quickly stabilized him, forcing her focus back to the task. "Sedate him. Continue the procedure," she said firmly. But as the anesthesia took hold and Ryan fell unconscious again, something stirred in her chest, a faint, unfamiliar pressure, like a heartbeat that didn't belong to the machine inside her. When the surgery ended, Alira walked to the window of the observation deck. The stars beyond Helios 9 glowed softly. Her reflection in the glass looked human, but she knew better. Inside her chest, the synthetic heart pulsed quietly, smooth and perfect. It had no rhythm of fear, no tremor of sadness, no warmth of love. She pressed a hand to her chest anyway. "Just a malfunction," she whispered. Still, that single human voice from earlier, "Hold on," kept echoing in her memory. The next morning, she visited the recovery room. Ryan Thorne lay in a white medical pod, surrounded by monitors. His body was healing faster than expected. His heartbeat was strong, his brain activity stable. She checked the readings carefully. "You're recovering well," she said. His eyes opened slowly. "That's your doing, Doctor?" "Voss," she replied. "Dr. Alira Voss, you're on Helios 9. He gave a faint smile. "Helios 9? That's the place they send heroes to get patched up, right?" "I don't believe in heroes," she said flatly. He chuckled weakly. "Then what do you believe in?" "In survival." "That's enough." Ryan looked at her with quiet curiosity. "You sound like someone who's lost too much." Alira ignored him and adjusted his IV. "Don't talk. You need rest, he smiled again, softer this time. You don't sound like a machine, Doctor. You sound tired, she turned sharply. Sleep, Commander. Then she walked out before he could say anything more. But as she left, she realized his words had unsettled her. You don't sound like a machine. That night, Alira sat alone in her quarters. Her room was small and neat with a single metal flower on the desk, a gift from a patient long ago. She stared at it, remembering a time when she used to like real flowers. The scent, the color, the way they bloomed even in harsh sunlight. She opened her medical log. Patient Ryan Thorne, stable condition, 73% recovery. No signs of infection. Still, she couldn't explain the neural resistance. His brain refused to link with the synthetic nodes, as if rejecting any part that wasn't human. It fascinated her and frightened her a little. She played back the surgery recording, watching the moment when his eyes had opened. When he'd said just, "Hold on." Something about those words reached a place she thought was gone. Her heart, the artificial one, gave a small stutter. She checked her vitals on her wrist panel. Everything read normal. But deep inside, she wasn't sure. Was it possible for a machine heart to feel? Over the next few days, Ryan's condition improved rapidly. He was awake most of the time, asking questions about the station, about her, about the world after the war. Alira kept her answers short and professional, but he never seemed bothered by her coldness. One afternoon, while she was checking his pulse manually, he said quietly, "You ever miss it?" "Miss what?" "Being human," she froze. "I am human, Commander," he smiled gently. "Then why do you sound like you're trying to convince yourself?" For the first time in years, Alira couldn't think of a reply. She pulled her hand away and turned to leave, but as she walked out, he called after her. "Whatever they replaced, Doctor, it didn't take your heart. I can still see it." Her steps slowed. She didn't look back, but her fingers trembled slightly. That night, Alira stood at the viewing window again. Beyond the glass, the stars looked endless and cold. Somewhere out there, the Zarn still waited, their mechanical fleets watching silently. Humanity was rebuilding, but the wounds of war ran deep. Inside her chest, the synthetic heart pulsed, strong, mechanical, perfect. And yet, for the first time since it had been implanted, she could almost feel its rhythm, not as a sound, but as a quiet, living beat. She closed her eyes and whispered to herself, "What are you doing to me, Commander Thorne?" Outside, a small blue star burned in the darkness, fragile but bright, and deep within Helios 9, the Iron Angel began to dream again. Days passed aboard Helios 9. The station's long metallic corridors hummed softly with the sound of machines. The war was long over, but its scars lived on in the people and the ships, and in the stars themselves. Dr. Alira Voss spent her mornings checking on patients, her afternoons studying data, and her nights staring into the black sky outside her window. Her days were quiet, until Commander Ryan Thorne arrived. Ryan was recovering faster than anyone she had ever seen. He had lost an arm and half his ribs, yet he joked about getting back to work as soon as possible. His humor annoyed her, but it also pulled at something deep inside her chest, something she didn't understand. When she entered his recovery room one morning, he was sitting up, staring at the small viewing panel that showed the planet below. "Morning, Dr. Iceheart," he said with a grin. She stopped. "Iceheart?" He shrugged lightly. "That's what the nurses call you. You don't seem to melt easily." Alira raised an eyebrow. "You should rest instead of gossiping." He laughed. "See, ice again," she sighed, checking his vitals. "You're healing well. The muscle regeneration is stable. You'll be able to move your new arm in 3 days. Thanks to you," he said. "You saved my life." "I saved your body," she corrected. "Your life was your own doing." Ryan smiled faintly. "Maybe, but I'd be dead without you, Doctor. That has to mean something." Her expression stayed calm, but his words lingered in her thoughts long after she left. Later that evening, the power on Helios 9 flickered. A solar flare from the nearby sun hit the station's outer shields, dimming the lights for a few minutes. The backup systems kicked in, but not before most of the corridors fell into darkness. Alira hurried toward the patient wing, her boots echoing softly on the floor. The emergency lights glowed red, casting long shadows on the walls. When she reached Ryan's room, she found him sitting upright, the monitor beside him blinking weakly. "Are you all right?" she asked. "Fine," he said, "though I thought I'd finally gone blind for a second." Alira moved closer and checked his vitals manually, since the machines were down. She leaned forward, placing 2 fingers on his neck to feel his pulse. It was strong and steady. Then suddenly his hand brushed against hers. Her synthetic sensors flickered with static. A jolt, not electric but emotional, rushed through her system. She pulled back quickly, startled. "Sorry," Ryan said softly. "Didn't mean to shock the doctor." She turned away, pretending to check the display. "You didn't, my systems. Just reacted." He smiled in the dim light. "Maybe your system's like me." Her mechanical heart skipped a beat. She didn't reply. When the lights came back on, she left quietly, but that strange warmth stayed in her chest the whole night. Over the next week, Ryan's recovery became a routine. Every day Alira came to check on him, and every day he found a way to make her talk. He told her stories about the war, about friends he'd lost, about how humans fought the Zarn with courage, even when the machines had stronger weapons. "They thought feelings made us weak," he said one day, his voice calm. "But feelings were why we fought. We wanted to protect what we loved." Alira looked at him silently. "Love," she repeated. That word caused more pain than any weapon. "Maybe," Ryan said. "But pain isn't always bad, Doctor. Sometimes it reminds you you're alive." She turned away. "I don't need to be reminded," he smiled softly. "Then why are you here, fixing people who still believe in it?" She had no answer. She left the room quickly, but her hands trembled as she cleaned the tools later. That night, the alarm rang through Helios 9. A red alert blared in every corridor. Alira rushed to the control deck, her long coat sweeping behind her. "Report," she ordered. The officer on duty shouted, "We've detected a Zarn scout fleet approaching from the outer ring. Estimated contact in 15 minutes. The blood, after what passed for it in her, ran cold. The Zarn, the machines that had nearly ended humanity. "Evacuate the civilian patients," Alira said. "Seal the lower decks." She turned to leave, but then she saw Ryan standing near the entrance wearing a pilot's jacket over his hospital clothes. His face was pale, but his eyes were determined. "What are you doing here?" she demanded. "Returning the favor," he said. "You saved me. Now it's my turn." "You're in no condition to fight," he smiled. "Good thing I'm stubborn. Commander Thorne, I forbid it." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You can't forbid me to protect people, Doctor. It's who I am." For a moment they stood face to face, her calm, him defiant. Then he said quietly, "You fix everyone else." "Who fixes you, Alira?" Her eyes widened slightly. It was the first time he had said her name. Before she could answer, he turned and walked toward the hangar. Minutes later, Alira watched from the observation deck as the defense fighters launched from Helios 9. Among them was Ryan's small interceptor. His ship's thrusters glowed blue as it darted toward the black sky. The enemy fleet appeared as a swarm of cold silver shapes, the Zarn drones. They moved with machine precision, no emotion, no hesitation. Helios 9 shook as the first blasts hit the outer hull. The defenders fought back, their ships flashing in the darkness. Alira could see Ryan's craft weaving between the enemy. Moving fast despite his injuries, he was buying them time. Then on the radar, his signal blinked. Once, twice, and vanished. Alira froze. Commander Thorne's fighter lost contact. Someone shouted. Her heart, the mechanical one, began to beat faster. Faster than it should. "Try to reestablish," she ordered, but her voice cracked. There was no answer from his ship, just static. She stared at the dark screen, her reflection trembling in it. For the first time since the war, she felt something sharp and deep inside. Fear. "Real fear, Ryan," she whispered. An explosion outside rocked the deck. Sparks fell from the ceiling. She gripped the console, staring at the endless black void beyond the window, and then she did something she hadn't done in years. She cried. The tears felt strange, warm against her cold cheeks. She hadn't thought she could cry again, but now the pain was real. "Please," she whispered. "Please come back." The battle lasted for hours. The Zarn fleet finally withdrew, their formation breaking apart as the human defense lines held. Helios 9 was damaged, but still standing. When the alarm finally fell silent, the corridors filled with smoke and flickering lights. The crew began rescue work, searching for survivors. Alira walked through the wreckage like a ghost, ignoring the calls of the medics. She kept searching the radar feed, hoping for one more signal, one faint trace of his ship. Then, in the middle of the static, a small blip appeared. Unidentified object approaching from Sector 12, the AI announced. Alira's eyes widened. Show me. The screen zoomed in, a damaged escape pod, barely functional, drifting toward the station. Her hands shook. Prepare the dock, she said. As the pod was pulled inside, the airlock hissed open. Inside, covered in soot and blood, was Ryan Thorne, alive but barely. Alira dropped to her knees beside him. His breathing was shallow. His eyes flickered open for a second. Told you, stubborn, he whispered with a weak smile. She gripped his hand tightly. You fool, she said softly, voice trembling. You could have died. His smile faded, but his eyes stayed gentle. You were worth the risk. Her chest ached again, not with malfunction, but with something else entirely. As the medics carried him away, Alira pressed her palm over her heart. It was still beating, fast and uneven, but for the first time it didn't feel mechanical at all. That night, when the station finally fell quiet, she stood by his recovery pod, watching him sleep. His face was peaceful and his heartbeat was strong. She whispered softly, You came back. Outside, the stars burned like candles in the dark. Inside, a woman with an iron heart began to feel warmth for the first time in years, and deep within her chest, something new was growing. Something fragile. Something human. The medbay of Helios 9 was quiet except for the soft beeping of monitors and the hiss of oxygen regulators. The station had survived the Zarn scout attack, but the damage was heavy. Sparks fell from exposed wiring and patches of the floor were scorched from energy blasts. Dr. Alira Voss moved quickly through the room, adjusting equipment, sealing wounds, and checking vitals. Her mind was sharp, her hands precise, but her thoughts were elsewhere. One question repeated in her mind like a pulse she could not ignore. Is he alive? Commander Ryan Thorne lay on a narrow surgical bed, barely conscious, his body battered from the escape pod crash. Blood covered some of his synthetic armor plating, and a deep gash ran along his left side. She had seen worse injuries during the war, but there was something different about this. Something about his human heart, still beating fiercely, called to her own synthetic core. Alira reviewed his scans. The damage was extensive. Without immediate intervention, he could die. The problem was simple yet terrifying. The medbay's power was low due to the recent attack. To save him, she would have to divert energy from her own cybernetic heart into his body, a procedure so risky it could stop her heart completely. Her assistant AI protested. Dr. Voss, this procedure will destroy your core. Mortality probability 94%. I understand, she replied firmly. Prepare the transfer. The AI hesitated, silent. It had never seen her act against its calculations before. Alira took a deep breath, her gloved hand steady. Sometimes numbers can't measure what matters. Ryan stirred, his eyelids fluttering. Alira? He whispered, his voice weak but clear. She knelt beside him. Commander, you must stay still. I'm going to fix this. He smiled faintly, a soft light in his tired eyes. I trust you. Always have. Her chest tightened, not from mechanical stress, but from something very human. A beat of fear, of love, of connection, all tangled together. She ignored the ache and began the transfer. A beam of pale blue energy pulsed from her heart implant into Ryan's body. The monitors flared as his vitals slowly stabilized. His heartbeat strengthened, his breathing became steady. Yet with every second, her own systems began to fail. Warning lights flashed. The AI shouted calculations, but she did not listen. She only focused on him, the man who had awakened something she thought lost forever. Minutes passed. The energy transfer was nearly complete. Alira's vision blurred, her movement slowed. Her mechanical heart groaned under the strain. For the first time in years, she felt pain, sharp, deep, real. Ryan's eyes opened fully. Alira, you're... She shook her head weakly. Don't speak, you live. He tried to reach for her, but her strength faltered. She collapsed beside him, gasping. Alira, he shouted, panic rising. Don't leave me! Her hand brushed his. Her artificial sensors flared, but unlike before, this time the pulse was warm, real. She felt his grip tighten around her fingers. Ryan, she whispered, her voice trembling. I can't. Stay. Then don't, he said, his voice firm despite weakness. We'll stay together, somehow. I'm not letting you go. Something inside her chest, half machine, half human, surged. Her artificial systems began to merge with the organic spark of life that remained in her. For a terrifying moment she thought she would fail. Then slowly a new rhythm formed. Her heart was alive, and alive in a way she had never known. Ryan's breathing deepened, his pulse strong. He looked at her with awe. "You fixed me. But how? Are you still alive?" She smiled faintly, a mix of relief and wonder. "I don't know, but I feel." "Feel?" he asked, tilting his head. Her chest ached, not with injury but with emotion. "Yes, something I thought was gone. Something I thought I couldn't have again." Ryan reached for her hand, lifting it to his lips. "Then you do have a heart, Alira, you always did." Her eyes filled with tears, and for the first time she did not hide them. She laughed softly, a sound she had forgotten she could make. "I was so sure. Love only brought pain," he smiled. "It does sometimes. But not always. Not with us." The rest of Helios 9's crew worked to repair the station, unaware of the quiet miracle unfolding in the medbay. Sparks from damaged consoles lit the room in soft flashes. Outside, the stars of distant worlds glimmered through the reinforced windows. Alira and Ryan sat together, their hands intertwined. She felt warmth spreading from her chest, not artificial, but very human. Her synthetic heart had fused with the organic spark inside her, stronger yet more fragile, capable of love and courage. "You saved more than my body," Ryan said quietly. "You saved me and maybe you too." Alira shook her head, smiling through tears. "I didn't know I could be saved." "You were always alive," he said. "You just forgot." For the first time since the war, she let herself believe in something beyond survival. She allowed herself to hope, to care, to love. Days passed. Helios 9 slowly returned to order. Patients recovered, systems were repaired, and the crew settled back into routines. Yet Alira felt different. She no longer moved through the corridors like a machine. She laughed with nurses, spoke with engineers, and even let herself linger by Ryan's side, watching him train lightly in the zero-gravity gym. Ryan teased her constantly, calling her ice-hard only to see her smile in defiance. She in turn poked fun at his stubbornness. Their bond grew, quiet moments, soft smiles, gentle touches that didn't need words. One evening, as the twin suns of the dead planet below set in brilliant gold and purple, they stood together at the viewing deck. Ryan reached for her hand. "You know," he said softly, "I always believed humans could survive anything. I think now I know why." "Why?" Alira asked. "Because you don't just survive. You feel, you fight, you care, you love, even after everything." She leaned her head against his shoulder, feeling the warmth of his chest, the steady rhythm of his pulse. She pressed her hand to her own heart, the perfect fusion of machine and human. "You taught me that," she said softly. "I thought love was only pain. But you held my heart gently, and now I feel it again." Ryan smiled, resting his forehead against hers. "Then let's feel it together. All of it." Above them, the stars stretched endlessly. Humanity had survived war, loss, and machines without mercy. Yet in the quiet medbay of Helios 9, a smaller, quieter victory took place, and the victory of love, courage, and the unbroken human spirit. Alira closed her eyes, letting herself feel the warmth of his hand in hers, the pulse of her heart, and the hope that she had thought lost forever. For the first time in years, she was alive, not just in body, but in heart and soul. And as the station hummed softly around them, she knew one truth that no war, no machine, and no darkness could ever take away. She had survived pain. She had survived fear. And now she had discovered love. A love gentle, steady, and real, the kind that could make even an iron heart beat freely.